I want to switch over now and talk a little bit about ZMET. ZMET is our technique, our approach we've developed about 14 years ago. I'm not here to pitch ZMET. I'm here to pitch thinking like ZMET, which happens to be based on metaphor theory and deep thinking. There's certainly many other ways you can incorporate this into your thinking. So, but if you think about ZMET as one of these tools, one of these metaphor elicitation tools, the Zaltman in it have some folks here who have worked with us in the past. I have to be honest, it's my father who is a Harvard professor and developed this technique out of the Mind of the Market lab there. If I didn't have some familiar faces in the room, I'd tell you I invented it. But anyways, it's the first ever patented qualitative research technique. Still the only patented qualitative research technique out there. So what, at some level, but I think what we like about that is we have this pride in the fact that there's something patentable about it. There's a lot of scientific foundation and rigor that went into developing it. As I talked about earlier, it draws from a lot of different disciplines, and it's one of the beauties of the technique. How it works, very briefly, it's a qualitative technique, and we always ask consumers, it's basically a 2-hour one-on-one psychotherapy session with consumers and draws a lot from art therapy in the actual interview, and I'll show you how metaphors come into it very soon. 2-hour interview process. We've done this with psychotherapists for a pharma company and actually had our participants being therapists, and they're I know what you're doing, as they're saying that to our moderators, so it's kind of reconfirming to us. But we always ask them to come in and ahead of time, a week or so ahead of time, think about the topic that we're interviewing on. It's called the ZMET question. So collect 5 to 7 pictures that express your thoughts and feelings about topic X. Thoughts and feelings about being a mom, drinking Starbucks coffee, thoughts and feelings about doing indulgent things, whatever the strategic issue is. It sounds like a very simple question. I mentioned that day-long session I had last week with a client wrestling with what the research issue should be. It was spent discussing what this question was. What is that deep mental model, that unconscious frame that we're going to access from consumers that we then want to explore in depth for 2 hours and report back to you and then start to use strategically for you. So it's a very simple yet complex task. I'm not going to go through the different steps in the interview process, but what you can do is you can guess that those images people bring in, we tell them don't bring in literal pictures of tire ads or actual tires, things like that. If it's for a tire study, we'll get them in the interview to think metaphorically. So bring in a picture of a woman floating on a cloud, or someone dragging a cross if there's a heavy cross to bear metaphor. Whatever these ideas are, they kind of get the idea that, okay, I need to think metaphorically about this experience. And those are those surface metaphors that we then have as sort of these gateways into the unconscious process. So this is a study we did this is a collage building exercise that we do at the end of a study. This is one we did for De Beers. Anything I'm sharing with you here, I'm allowed to share with you, by the way. I guess that's kind of assumed. But this was a study we did for De Beers with interviewing high net worth men on their thoughts and feelings about buying diamonds for their wives. This is a collage at the end, those 5 to 7 pictures. One of the steps we have is that participant, and these are one-on-one interviews. So they create these separately. That participant creating a collage in Photoshop. We have one of our graphic artists there that's not leading them by any chance. Our graphic artists won't ever say, why don't you put this picture here? That would look really pretty. It's always like, I'm your hand. I happen to know how to work this software. Why don't you tell me where you'd like to put this? And the meanings that come out of here are really cool. So this is another person's collage. So over on this side is one segment of 5 different participants' collages. These are some of the analyses we do back in our office, just like I'm going to do here. This is another one with 6 collages from consumers. And look at these 2 segments. And one is heavy consumers, and one, I'll just put up the answers actually now for time's sake, and the other is light consumers. Both were the same socioeconomic status. The light consumers could have bought diamonds more frequently for their wives if they wanted to. But you can see here that the heavy users had a lot more of status, the luxury car, the individual woman. And remember, they collected these images at home. You'll sometimes see the same image here just due to the fact that a popular ad's out in a magazine or something. But they collect these at home. The woman here buy the luxury car. These people would talk about, they weren't quite this callous, but they say, I like buying diamonds for my wife. I'm very successful. I have a beautiful wife. I have a beautiful luxury car, and I like to adorn my wife with beautiful things to show my success in life. They would also follow up with, and I love her, and it's a nice sign of our love. And they did have that side, but it was not the driving frame to it. On the light side, they bought this for special occasions. Look how much more emotion, how much more of the relationship it is. It's your anniversary, engagement, very special moments. And look how much more that was driven by that notion of love. So it's really interesting how you can start to see these ideas that would be hard to articulate in other forms be activated just through the simple use of metaphors and some metaphor analysis. Incidentally, I always have men ask for this slide at the end. They say, can I show that to my wife to tell her the reason I don't buy her diamonds all the time is because I love her. So anyone that wants this, we can arrange that. You can see what they did with this. One of the deep metaphors you see in the diamond category is this deep metaphor of journey, this notion that diamonds are forever, they're timeless. People also talked about diamonds being mile markers on life's journey. Again, your engagement, first anniversary, 10th anniversary, special moments. I've been hit up twice now for birthing jewelry. I don't know if that was something that I was conned into or if that's a common thing, but these are different mile markers in life where diamonds are something you might want to get. So you can see here, they actually, unlike Michelin, Journey's a little more consumer friendly of a label. They actually talked about this being the Journey series of diamond jewelry, and this product line is still out there now. This is back from 2006, I believe. They use the deep metaphor for strategy in a number of different ways. One, for communications, you can obviously see laid out in a pathway. Surface metaphors they use. With every step, love grows. Love isn't literally growing with every step, but it's a nice metaphor that communicates this deeper idea. They also had this for product development. They actually designed this product line where you can add pendants on every year as you go. And so they actually used it for innovation early on and then communications later. Oticon is a hearing aid manufacturer. They're a Danish company that actually invented the hearing aid 105 years ago, I believe. So they're one of the leaders in this category. They came to us and they asked us to help them understand what's the hardest nut to crack in that industry, which is people who have been diagnosed with a hearing impairment and have been told by a professional to go get a hearing aid, yet they don't. And so they want to understand what is it about this. And what you could see, this is an example of a deep metaphor framework here. The deep metaphors being activated in this study were this notion of container, people being trapped. They brought in a lot of pictures of brick walls, closed doors to show that they were isolated from people. I'm out to dinner with my friends, but I'm kind of doing the fake head nod because I can't hear what anyone's talking about, and I feel removed from them, and it's really, obviously some key emotions associated with that sort of an experience. And so they talked about being trapped or isolated. And they also had this notion of the ideal, which is interesting too. This notion that, now my hearing's going, I have graying hair, I'm walking a little slower. It's just one more sign that I'm not the 18-year-old I used to be and I'm not old. And so they started to talk about feeling flawed. And what they wanted is to be transformed back into, maybe not when they were 18, but at least back into a younger state and back into a whole new world, or back into the real world in a sense, through this model. And this key deep metaphor of transformation for the hearing aid was important. The interesting thing with a hearing aid is I don't want to feel flawed or old by having this hearing impairment. But the second I put that in, one of the consumers called it a neon sign on my head telling other people that I'm flawed and old. Unlike your eyeglasses, which is another deteriorating sense, and some people will spend a lot of money on eyeglasses. They're not embarrassed about them, right? It's the same thing, right? But there's some sort of shame that goes along with this idea. So this is what they came out of it with. Like De Beers, they used it for the new product development as well as communications. So they called this hearing aid Delta. Delta is the symbol of change, right? So it's a surface expression of the deep metaphor of transformation. The product is about transformation, so they named the product around a transformation metaphor. And you can see breaking free from containment. This is a great example, by the way, of why I say the themes are what matters in these deep metaphors. This is container, just like Michelin was container. Two totally different expressions of container. This is about being trapped by your hearing loss, and the theme coming out with Michelin was being protected, being contained in a safe way. So that's where it really becomes important to know how one of these 16 deep metaphors are coming to life in your particular instance. The neat thing they also did here was they made these color palettes. Everyone else in the industry now has since copied this exact model here, but they made these in funky colors. So it used to be that you'd match it as close as you could to skin color and kind of hide this shame that you had. And they said, you know what, people wear these big Bluetooth things in their ear. They do all these crazy things. Why is it that we can't have a hearing aid be something cool like that? And they actually came out, there's like leopard skin, camouflage, all these really cool colors. And they've seen people now are actually like showing them to their friends out, as they do observational research around this, showing friends about this sort of thing. So this deep metaphor framework helped them think about their issue in a whole different way. Last thing here is a slide here I'll talk about, a little kind of heavy to take in, but this is basically our form of mind mapping. You've probably seen this done quantitatively before. This is a qualitative version. We actually do it through a quantitative process, but with smaller samples. We basically create individual mental models. This is your consumer's brain on paper. So this is a study we did on thoughts and feelings about the role of gum in your life. We did this with young adults across 7 different countries, and we came out with basically all the different constructs in their mind as it relates to the mental model or frame around gum. And so you can see this idea of refreshing. If you would explicitly talk about this in communications, it's kind of like a ripple effect. You can see what other ideas here directly light up in consumers' minds and what other ideas maybe not so directly. So refreshing has a lot to do with flavor burst. Refreshing doesn't have much to do with clean mouth and teeth. So it gives you sort of a strategic playing field. I'll show you how in a moment you can use these, revisiting the tire example. But we basically go and create an individual mind map of each consumer, dump them into a software program, get rid of the outliers, and you're left with the shared mind of the market. We don't ignore those outliers. Gary was talking about this earlier too. Sometimes maybe only 2 or 3 people said it, but what a cool idea if only other people thought that way too. So you still capture that in other ways. But this kind of gives you the playing field to do for strategy. So this next slide is a made-up one, but it'll be an easy way to think about these. Revisiting that tire example here, if you were doing this for Michelin, they might look at this and say, okay, well, there's this bundle of ideas here about being reliable, strong, family safe, having peace of mind. That's kind of our area we want to explore. Well, let's go own that as Michelin. And sure enough, the kind of metaphors, the kind of ways that consumers will talk about this bundle of ideas will tend to be heavily container-oriented metaphors. And you can look at this as Pirelli and say, well, let's let them own that. Let's own this space up here about driving, being in control, feeling excited. And sure enough, as consumers talk about this, they'll use control-type metaphors. And if you're a third company and you're doing the study, you can start to say, okay, here's where our 2 competitors are playing. Do we want to own this area down here, or do we want to try to own maybe this area and a little bit of each of them? Or perhaps we just want to own what Michelin does. We just have to do it better. Whatever the case might be, you can also re-engineer these maps. This is consumers' existing mental model. A lot of communications or product innovation is done with the idea that we're introducing some new concept to consumers that they can't currently imagine. And so we need to figure out where is the best way to link a new construct in. Is it through safety? Is it through long-lasting or treadwear? Whatever it is. And so you can work with these mind maps in a lot of different ways. I just showed this to tie it into that overall deep metaphor model. It's sort of 2. One is the deeper unconscious frames, and the other is literally tactically what ideas are networked in the mind. I'll finish off with a case study here for Cheetos. Just very quickly, Cheetos, we do a lot of work with Frito-Lay on their different brands, and this was a fun one. Uncovered a deep insight through metaphor interviews. They basically came to us. They were losing share with adults. They're doing fine with kids, but they're losing share with adults.